and without a breakthrough, some might soon give up. The harsh reality of wilderness survival was evident in Dave, who looked gaunt and eagerly ate a freshly caught fish on his 46th day. He awaited dawn to fish by the lake and pass time by carving wood. As the sun rose, Dave rushed to fish during the early morning bite window and soon caught a fish, sparing him from hunger. He thanked the fish while eating its nutrient-rich sperm sac, considering its high nutritional and medicinal value. With winter approaching, he decided to build a smoking rack by the fire to preserve food, hanging fish slices to smoke and rationing himself to eat only every 3 days, supplementing with wild grass and berries if necessary. This plan might just see him through to the end. The camera shifts to Carrie. She insists on showing me the good stuff she cooks, only to reveal a soup of dried salted fish and grass. She claims it kills pathogens on socks. "You might not eat well, but you must live exquisitely," she remarks. After disinfecting, she starts rinsing everything in the water. I'm not sure if it's because she slept without clothes the other night, or from the sauna days ago, but her thighs have several spider bites now showing serious infection. Fortunately, her profession is in herbal planting. She quickly finds some plantain herbs, then collects pine resin by spearing it onto a tree. Mixing these creates an antibacterial and anti-inflammatory effect. Carrie crushes them into a wilderness salve, cleans the wound, and applies it with medical tape, hoping for healing over the next few days. Otherwise, she'll have to quit the challenge. The next morning, she shows me the wound. It hasn't improved much, but the swelling has gone down. After rebandaging, she decides to make a musical instrument for fun. Carving a groove at one end of a piece of wood, she places some hot charcoals inside. Time will take care of the rest. After the groove is charred, she sands it down, drills holes at the other end for tuning pegs, and strings it with fishing line. Carrie sits by the campfire, playing and singing. Greg's fishing rig does not disappoint him. It looks like he has hooked another big fish, but unexpectedly it gets caught in the reeds while he is pulling it in. To prevent the fish from escaping, he quickly gets into the water to grab it. He manages to retrieve it, but slips and ends up drinking lake water before he can celebrate. Fortunately, the fish doesn't get away, or he would have had to eat grass instead. However, with the temperature only at 5 degrees Celsius, Greg is freezing half to death. He doesn't want to lose out on the $1 million prize due to hypothermia, so he quickly strips and warms up by the fire. He has been worrying about firewood. Chopping every day costs a lot of energy, and he has exhausted the local resources. Reluctantly, he has to go elsewhere to collect wood, walking nearly 600 or 700 meters back and forth. The complex terrain and limited food intake make him seriously doubt his life choices, so he decides to pack up and move. The next day, a light rain starts, but it doesn't stop Greg's determination to move. He gets the campfire going and puts some charcoals into a pot, then transfers them to the new campsite, covers them with dry branches, and quickly starts a fire. As the sky begins to cloud over again, he predicts a heavy rain soon and hurriedly sets up a temporary tent. I think moving now is really unwise, and hope this decision doesn't spell disaster for him. That evening, Greg plans to improve his shelter tomorrow. After making a detailed plan, he decides to go to bed early. However, not long after lying down, a lake quake occurs. This phenomenon is caused by air pressure on the lake, similar to a tidal effect. He must constantly watch the water level. By early morning, the lake water has reached the edge of the campfire. Possibly because of getting wet during the day, Greg can't warm up no matter what. Even huddled in a waterproof sleeping bag, it does no good. His fingers are starting to stiffen. Carrie's situation is also not looking good. She feels extremely sick and wants to vomit. The spider venom has likely entered her bloodstream. After a sleepless night, her throat and stomach hurt, and the glands in her groin are swollen. This situation is definitely risky. Carrie senses that today might be her last day in the challenge. Before leaving, not wanting to have regrets, she takes one last walk around the campsite. Every blade of grass and tree is so familiar, especially the bamboo grove, which touches her deeply. It's uncertain if Carrie will leave the competition, but it would be a real pity if she does. Dan checks his fishing line daily, relying solely on luck to catch fish. Surprisingly, his luck is quite good, and he managed to catch a plump fish. Luck is indeed a part of skill, but it's not enough to win challenges. Back at camp, he cooked a delicious meal, reminiscent of the dishes his mother used to prepare for him, including the quick method she taught him for deboning fish. Eating brought back memories of his mother's cooking. After eating, Dan relaxed and sunbathed, his longing for family overwhelming him. It's day 48 of the survival challenge. Today, Carlin decided to fish by the lake after somehow finding 2 earthworms. With what she considered the perfect bait, she was confident, though her casting seemed amateur. She admitted she wasn't good at fishing, despite having tried other methods before. On day 28, she built a fish weir, an ancient fishing method, and on day 36, she crafted a fish trap. Unfortunately, both traps had yet to catch a single fish. Unaware, Carlin stayed until nightfall. Perhaps the lake god pitied her, as a fish finally bit, but she lost it while pulling it in. Seeing the fish escape, Carlin broke down and cried. Lying despondently on the ground, she heard a fish splash and quickly resumed fishing. Soon, another fish was hooked, and upon successfully landing it, tears of relief flowed. She quickly cooked and devoured the fish, reigniting her hope to become the first female champion and show the strength of a young girl. The challenge reached day 50. Dan's longing for his family intensified, sitting by the fire, continually motivating himself. After filling his soul, he walked back inside. The next day, a crew boat came to pick someone up. To everyone's surprise, it was homesick Dan, which was unexpected yet understandable. Loafing is a good survival tactic, but idleness leads to overthinking, making solitude unbearable. After Dan's departure, only 6 contestants remained. Surprisingly, the least favored, Fowler, became the strongest contender. His bamboo mansion was now complete, sturdy, warm, and fully furnished. With food supplies dwindling to a few fish heads and a half fish, he needed to find more. A bird in a tree caught his attention. Fowler took out his slingshot, hoping for a change from fish. Unfortunately, his shot only scared the bird away. Undeterred, he decided to create a bird-catching device, setting up a sensitive trap with bait. Confident, he waited nearby for his prey. Soon, a bird was trapped. Greg fed foxes, Fowler fed birds, showcasing the cleverness of the local wildlife. On day 51, Carrie, who had been bitten by a venomous spider a few days earlier, was ready to quit due to an infected wound. After much consideration, she decided to persevere for another day, leaving no regrets. She applied a pine resin ointment and brewed pine tea, hoping that internal and external treatments would alleviate her condition. Otherwise, she would lose her chance at the $1 million prize. The next morning, Carrie eagerly checked her wound, which, fortunately, was healing, and her symptoms were fading. Overjoyed at the hopeful turn of events, Carrie was reminded of the saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," and looked forward to providing even more exciting footage. The scene shifts to Greg. After moving in the rain, he got too cold. His teeth chattered all night, sending telegraphs. Before dawn, he sat by the fire to warm up. Still chilled to the bone by sunrise, standing up made him dizzy and blurry-eyed. It seems he developed hypothermia, causing weakness and hallucinations, potentially life-threatening in severe cases. At 53, Greg could barely hold on. After much hesitation, he called for rescue. Failing to win the prize money for his daughter's house, he felt deeply guilty. After Greg left, only 5 contestants remained. The competition among the strong players officially began. Fowler's trap did not disappoint, seemingly catching something. To prevent the prey from escaping, he covered it with a cloth, carefully reached in, and gave it a neck massage, then plucked it completely. Though the bird didn't provide much energy, it was better than eating grass and missing out on $1 million prize. Fowler, in a good mood, took out a 9-toothed cake. Seemingly cleaning and collecting firewood, he was actually showing off his craftsmanship. After boasting, he returned to the shelter to eat. To fully utilize the small bird, Fowler stewed it into a soup and drank it, gaining strength to keep surviving. On day 59 of the survival challenge, Dave shot an arrow at something he thought was a wild boar, but it turned out to be its droppings. Recently, he noticed signs of wild boars nearby. As a skilled archer, Dave couldn't wait any longer, so he decided to set some traps first. A few days ago, he found a piece of wire, perfect for making a lasso trap according to the rules. To ensure the boar couldn't escape, he also used dead wood for a secondary trap. The rest was up to time and luck. Dave made tea with strawberry leaves, then decided to check the boar trap. Though signs of boar were visible nearby, the trap hadn't been triggered. He found an excellent hiding spot next to a boar trail intersection, chopped some bamboo for camouflage, and then, armed with a bow and arrow, lay in ambush. Wild boars are active during the day in winter to regulate their body temperature. After a while, he heard a pig squeal nearby, guessing the lasso trap had caught it. Considering the panicked boar's combat power, with biting force strong enough to crush bones, he approached the trap cautiously with his bow and arrow. However, upon arrival, he found he was too late. The scene was a mess, disrupted by the boar, which had also overturned a fixed camera, seeming to mock Dave in the footage. Carrie, having just escaped a tiger, entered a wolf's den. Her wound got infected, and then rats invaded. Last night, one almost successfully attacked her. The rats carried a hantavirus, not something herbs alone could cure. So, she decided to make a rat trap. She notched a stick with a knife to make a trigger, ensuring any rat that dared come would not return. Carrie's trap worked as expected, catching a rat. Her only regret being it wasn't edible, otherwise it would have been breakfast. The most awkward thing about living alone in the wilderness is when a girl is studying a trap intently, and the prey is studying her from behind. This was mainly because every night the creature disrupted Megan's sleep. Foxes are common carriers of rabies. A bite not only risks the $1 million prize, but also her life, should the virus activate. Megan initially wanted to avoid conflict with the fox. However, she had run out of food, and the plants she relied on for survival were about to disappear due to the cold weather. Therefore, she decided to trap and eat the fox. Given that a fox's sense of smell is 24 times stronger than a human's, Megan wore gloves while setting the trap. She bent a small tree and fixed it to the trigger mechanism, then made a noose from an umbrella cord and tied it on top. She camouflaged the area with branches and placed bait behind the noose. With the hanging trigger device set, all she needed to do was wait for her prey. The next morning, Megan checked her fishing setup first. With no bait available, she resorted to imitating Jiang Taigong. She then went to check her trap's catch, only to find the noose bitten through. While she pondered this, she suddenly felt a chill down her spine. Turning around, she saw the fox studying her from behind. As night fell, the fox indeed sought revenge, wandering around Megan's shelter and leaving scratch marks even on the firewood. Megan could only knock on the rain shelter to warn it, but the fox was undeterred and continued its ways. By 7 a.m., Megan was completely overwhelmed, contemplating quitting the competition. Meanwhile, Carlin received a luxurious takeaway early in the morning. Unfortunately, the moose was an endangered species, which the show's producers had warned not to harm. She could only watch helplessly as $3 million slipped away. When she went out to find food and noticed a hole in her glove, she decided to repair it using asphalt glue. She collected some resin from a spruce tree, mixed it with ash, and evenly applied it to the glove. After the asphalt glue solidified, the hole was patched. Carlin continued foraging for food. Unable to catch fish, she survived on grass. The dandelions she found were excellent, reputed to clear heat, detoxify, and boost immunity. After collecting some, she moved on and soon found some nettles, rich in minerals and vitamins. Realizing raw nettles could irritate the throat, she decided to cook them back at camp. Soon, a pot of grass soup was ready, and she enjoyed it immensely, more satisfied than if she had seen her boyfriend. 2 months earlier, Dave was different. Now, he looked this way not because he lacked food, but because he was reluctant to eat. The smoked fish slices he had saved were now rationed to outlast the other contestants in the $1 million survival challenge. Previously, he could eat a whole fish in one meal, but later reduced his intake to 1 slice a day. Now he planned to eat 1 slice every 2 days, potentially lasting another 2 months. Dave, an excellent marksman, had also tried hunting wild boar, but the local animals were too scarce and cunning. With no choice left, he resorted to brewing tea from wild grass and mushrooms. It was uncertain how long his body could withstand this. On day 64 of the survival challenge, heavy snow began to fall, complicating survival conditions. The snow helped in tracking prey, but the increased energy expenditure and slippery roads were significant challenges. After fruitlessly searching for footprints, he continued to fish by the lake, knowing the fish had moved to deeper waters, but still hoping for success. In the end, he caught nothing. By now, he had lost nearly 50 pounds. Each morning, he woke up either from hunger or cold. To escape this predicament, he decided to go hunting, hoping to catch a large animal. His first task was to string his bow, which had a pull weight of 60 pounds. Despite his best efforts, Dave couldn't string it, blaming the excessive clothing. After a brief rest, he prepared to try again, but never imagined he would be so weak. Using all his strength was futile, and he had to abandon the effort. The camera moves to Fowler. He decides to take a day off to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Looking at the distant snow-capped mountains, he is reminded of his hometown and daughter. Every winter he builds snowmen with her, and this year will be no different. Soon, Fowler's little snowman is complete. He lets out an evil laugh, pulls his slingshot and lands a headshot. If only my hunting shots were this accurate, I wouldn't be going hungry. The camera moves to Megan. After the snowfall, the foxes finally stop bothering her. Her first task upon waking is to check the fishing gear, but sadly there's not even a single hair on it. Desperately needing food, she decides to make a bird trap. She weaves it together piece by piece, creating a clever trap, and uses some rotten berries as bait, confident she'll catch a bird. As edible plants become harder to find, Megan checks the trap she set yesterday, only to be disappointed. The bait is gone, the trap sprung, but the bird has vanished. She had set a rabbit trap a few days ago. Holding on to her last hope, she goes to check it. Surprisingly, the trap had caught a large fat rabbit, but it had escaped. It seems there is no shortage of food here, but her hunting skills need improvement. How much longer she can hold out is uncertain, as the survival challenge reaches day 67. Near Carlin, a noise suddenly erupts from a group of wild geese by the lake. To feast on wild goose stew, Carlin decides to make several slingshots. They are simple to make, with a range long enough to ensnare the prey. To improve accuracy, he makes 2 sets. Once the geese swim to shore, Carlin carefully approaches them, but by the time he gets close, the geese are gone. The human body, lacking protein for so long, starts consuming muscle tissue for energy. Carlin resorts to fishing by the lake, fearing he may have to forfeit the $1 million prize. The camera returns to Megan. Desperate for meat, she is scratching her head in frustration. On the 3rd day of the competition, she set up a gill net, but after more than 60 days, not only has it failed to catch any fish, it frequently catches her instead. So she decides to convert the gill net into a scoop net. At this point, I am utterly impressed by her. I had thought this season forbade gill nets, but as the challenge nears its end, we witness the most divine maneuver in the history of solo wilderness survival. Even more miraculously, the scoop net is ready for immediate use, and the unused fishing gear suddenly catches a fish. Megan quickly removes her shoes, grabs the scoop net, and braves the icy lake water to retrieve the fish. After much effort, she finally manages to land the fish. Experiencing rain after a long drought, Megan is ecstatic. So she quickly makes a pot of fish soup, thinking she won't have to eat grass for the next few days. The camera moves to Carrie. A few days ago, the snow excited her immensely, and with her wounds healed, she's thrilled. She lies on the snow and begins body painting. After playing, she returns to the shelter and starts a fire. Unnoticed, the challenge reaches day 70. Carrie's fishing gear seems to have caught something. Another plump fish. In this brutal survival challenge, the longer participants last, the more they crave protein, because each additional day increases their chances of winning. Carrie's luck and skill remain strong. As she harvests the fish meat, she also collects a lot of roe. She can't wait to feast on a big meal, fresh fish paired with fresh mushrooms and nutritious dandelions, making it the most lavish meal of the season. These hard-earned foods deeply move her, prompting her to reflect on whether her competitive nature and the physical toll taken for money are worth it. At night, Carrie can't help but miss her hometown, thinking that besides the hardships of survival, perhaps loneliness is the biggest challenge for the contestants. Fowler keeps busy to cope with loneliness and never dares to stop. He records his experiences on sticks every day. Recently, he made a small rabbit toy for his daughter and has now also crafted a spoon and bowl. During the day, he searches for food and chops wood, aiming to keep himself occupied. However, he cannot block out the feeling of loneliness. He remembers his wife's loving farewell before he left, and his 2 young daughters, which brings tears to his eyes. The longing feels like a heavy stone, making it hard for him to breathe. On day 72 of the survival challenge, the crew's boat appears on the water, indicating someone might be giving up. As the camera zooms in, it turns out to be Carrie. This unexpected turn shocks everyone. Although Carrie claims it doesn't matter, her expression betrays her. Just yesterday, she was confident about the challenges ahead. But a song in the evening made her realize that money isn't that important. Health is the true wealth. Despite her withdrawal, Carrie's open-minded attitude is admirable. She managed to make medicine from herbs after a spider bite and contributed many memorable moments. From this perspective, she has already won. Looking at before and after photos of Dave from the competition shows the immense difficulty. Today is his 73rd day in the wilderness. His spirit seems to have merged with nature, and he can even feel the trees breathing. Though his body can't keep up with his spirit, he still persists in fishing by the lake. Severe hunger has led to malnutrition. He has stored 33 smoked fish but hesitates to eat them. His body is so weak that even breathing feels difficult. After standing by the lake without catching any fish, Dave tries to change fishing spots, but feels dizzy and collapses on a rock. Fortunately, he gets up quickly, realizing he might be in serious trouble. Previously, he ate a piece of smoked fish every 2 days, but now he must break this rule due to his physical condition and upcoming medical checkup. After drinking a pot of fresh vegetable and fish soup, he seems somewhat better. The medical team arrives to ensure the contestants' safety and regularly performs health checks. Reluctantly, Dave steps on the scale, which shows he has lost about 38 kilograms. His blood pressure is dangerously low, and the crew is shocked by his skeletal appearance. After discussion, the medical team informs Dave that he must end his participation to prevent organ failure. This strong man can no longer hold back his emotions. Even though he offers to eat all his stored food, the medical staff do not give him any chance, insisting he needs immediate hospital treatment. It's a devastating blow for him, filled with regret and sorrow. If he hadn't been so hard on himself, perhaps he could have won this season. He had planned for the future, but failed to live well in the present. Wishing him a quick recovery, the competition now moves on to the final 3 contestants. The final showdown begins, with the camera returning to Fowler. After waking up, he heads to the lake to find food, carrying a duck-catching rig and fire-making tools. The first task at the lake is to start a fire, as the temperature has dropped to freezing. Getting wet is dangerous, but after his fire fails to light, he stubbornly chops some dry branches. Despite nearly wearing out his flint, he still struggles to ignite a fire. Fowler's mentality exploded under the harsh conditions of hunger and cold. After calming down, he checked his fishing device and felt somewhat better after catching a fish. However, while reeling in the fish, he discovered the lines were tangled. He tried to perform a trick with another rod, only to accidentally throw the fish back into the water. This completely shattered Fowler's composure. After fixing the fishing rod while cursing, he had no choice but to find something else to eat. Though he couldn't dig up gold from the soil, what he found was akin to gold because it could keep him alive. This would give him a chance to win the $300,000 prize. However, identifying plants was Fowler's weakness. Unsure if the roots were poisonous, he decided to collect them for later use. His biggest hope still lay in fishing, but he was speechless when he saw the dock and fishing rods submerged due to the rising water level. After finding no fish, he had to raise the dock, as it was his main source of food. Nearby, he felled a spruce tree and, with great effort, dragged it to the shore to fix the dock, after which he was completely exhausted. If he couldn't find food, he might have to risk eating the potentially poisonous roots. Switching to Megan, she had baited the spot with fish roe 2 days ago, hoping to attract male fish during their spawning season. Today, she decided to check on the results, and indeed the male fish were frenzied over the roe. After successfully landing the fish, Megan, thrilled, used a rock to quickly dispatch it. While processing the fish, she was surprised by another tug on the line. Since converting a cut net into a scoop net, her fishing skills seemed to have awakened. After sending off the second fish, she went to check a third line. Although the fish was slightly smaller, it was a luxury during these times of general starvation. As the medical team arrived by boat for regular checkups to ensure the contestants' safety due to widespread malnutrition, Megan was shocked to find she had only lost 18 pounds despite consuming mostly grass. Her blood pressure and heart rate were fine, which relieved her. She quickly made a fish soup to replenish her energy. Idle and unable to sit still in the cold winter, Megan decided not to just fortify her shelter, but also to enjoy making a hammock. She chopped some small trees, sized them evenly, and wove the branches together. Soon, she had fashioned a hammock frame, which she tied with parachute cord between two large trees. After ensuring its stability, she began to relax on it. On day 75 of the survival challenge, Megan went out to look for more food. She quickly found some orange peel lichen, which, although not very energetic, was better than grass. She also found rose hips, rich in vitamins C and K, which she ate while collecting to maintain her subsistence. At 4 a.m., Megan was tormented by a toothache that kept her awake all night. A toothache might not be a disease, but it can be excruciatingly painful at such critical times, potentially leading to disastrous consequences if it caused her to quit the competition. Meanwhile, Carlin had been living alone in the wilderness for over 70 days, enduring not only hunger and cold, but also the agony of isolation without a phone or internet. To overcome her loneliness, she decided to make a large drum from cowhide. She found a piece of hollow deadwood, cut it into slices, and used an axe to chop out 2 semicircles to assemble into a drum frame. She had found a cow skeleton and intact cowhide on the second day of the competition, which had finally come into use. After washing it in water and hanging it on a tree trunk to wring out the moisture, once dry, I cut a circle around the drum frame and then softened the edges with water to create a lace effect. After finishing these tasks, Carlin felt tired and hungry and decided to look for some food in the forest. She collected a small bag of wild grass berries and then returned to the shelter to continue making the cowhide drum. Using a cow leg bone she found earlier as a tool, she punched holes around the edge and threaded parachute cord through in a crisscross pattern. The process was then repeated until the large cowhide drum was completed. The final step was to test it. After confirming there were no issues with the drum sound, she hugged it and began to beat and hum. Whether it was because she played a retreat beat or not, Carlin began to miss her family and boyfriend and even considered quitting the competition. On day 76, Fowler went to the lakeside for a routine check of his fishing gear, but caught no fish, and even lost his bait. Previously, he could always catch 4 or 5 fish here. Whether it was due to colder temperatures or strong winds, he had seen no catches in the past week, leaving him somewhat at a loss. Returning to the shelter, he felt hungry and exhausted, and turned his attention to the roots he had dug up 2 days earlier. At this critical point, he didn't care whether they were poisonous or not, and eagerly started cooking them. After boiling, he tasted one and said it tasted good, somewhat like carrot, though he wasn't sure. But it was definitely a bittersweet moment. Perhaps due to the tension of recent times, Fowler began to cry while eating. Today was his 77th day in the competition. After a heavy snow, he couldn't catch even a fish whisker, though he did catch plenty of crow's feet around his eyes. The last medical checkup revealed he had lost 54 pounds, and he might be advised to leave the show if he lost any more. He had hoped for a catch today, but it was just the wind playing with him. To prevent hunger and loneliness from eroding him, Fowler needed to keep busy and divert his attention. While he could undertake major projects when he was physically strong, now he was so weak he could only chop bamboo to make chopsticks. He had made exactly 70 pairs so far. If not for the $300,000 prize just within reach, he might have already gone home to his wife. The scene shifts to Carlin, who had been surviving on wild greens. She thought she could win this enduring battle by eating grass, but found that other contestants were not vegetarians either. Thus, she decided to try her luck at the lake again, as she needed some protein supplementation, or she might have to quit at the next routine medical checkup. Megan's situation was also not optimistic. A toothache had tormented her so much in the past 2 days that she could develop sepsis if it was severe. Coupled with the pouring rain outside her shelter, her mood became unbearable. She couldn't help but think of her husband and 2 children. She thought making a fish basket from reeds might help, but the flood of homesickness was uncontrollable. Sitting on a dead tree by the lake, she pondered. On day 78, the production team's boat came across the water. All 3 contestants were on the verge of collapse. Who would give up first? The camera zoomed in, and it was Megan. The toothache and missing her family broke her. She thought not bringing photos would prevent her from missing her family, but as a mother of 2, she couldn't help it. When both her body and mind were defeated, she had no resistance left. Although she didn't make it to the end to win the prize, her strong will and determination were indeed commendable. Just surviving on grass until now was quite remarkable. After Megan left, only Fowler and Carlin remained. Who among them could last until the end? On day 80 of living alone in the wilderness, both individuals were on the brink of collapse. Fowler, looking at his emaciated reflection, reminisced about his plump figure when he first entered the competition, cutting through thickets. On the first day, he quickly built a temporary shelter and, after finding a suitable long-term campsite, he began addressing food shortages by constructing a duck-catching aircraft carrier and customizing a dock for himself. He survived on fish and wild vegetables and berries and managed to build a bamboo house before the onset of winter. As the weather cooled, food became scarcer. To alleviate loneliness and hunger, he continually distracted himself with crafts, enduring each difficult night and recording these experiences on his walking stick. By day 70, his longing for his family became overwhelming, like a boulder suffocating him. The subsequent days brought challenges that pushed him to the edge. However, the prospect of a $3 million prize compelled him to persevere and continue searching for food. After launching his duck-catching craft again, he sat and fell into deep thought, unknowingly reaching day 86. At this time, Carlin's mind was consumed by thoughts of food, particularly the salmon sashimi her boyfriend made, which plunged her into nostalgic memories. She had traveled far for the money, welcomed by 2 deer upon arrival, though local regulations prohibited eating them. Confident in her architectural background, she began building a permanent shelter. After several busy days, the cabin was completed, only for her efforts to be immediately challenged, leaving her deeply frustrated and nearly quitting. She then focused on finding food, but her poor fishing skills forced her to try making a fish basket, which yielded no fish even after half a month, bringing her to the edge of collapse. Fortunately, with the help of dandelions and some nettles, she managed to survive. During this time, she either searched for dandelions or sat in her shelter, weaving. Early winter's first heavy snow allowed her to relax, and she made a leather drum for entertainment, using scavenged resources and tools. After a complex process, she finished the drum. Nearly 3 months of hardship left her as thin as a rail, and she now feared being asked to leave the show. However, when the medical team arrived to check on her, they found she had lost 1/3 of her weight since the start of the competition. Meanwhile, Fowler, who was also undergoing a medical exam, had lost over 60 pounds. The next step was measuring blood pressure and heart rate, critical health indicators. Failure to meet standards meant elimination. After the medical team deliberated, Carlin and Fowler anxiously awaited the outcome. Finally, it was determined that Carlin had to stop the challenge and seek hospital treatment. Despite her preparedness, she couldn't help crying, touching the waterproof fabric of her shelter with evident regret and reluctance. Although Carlin did not win the $1 million prize, she deserves immense respect. Surviving alone in the wild for 86 days tests not just survival skills, but more importantly, strong willpower and determination. I hope she recovers soon and faces the 5th season of the Wilderness Survival Challenge. On day 87, the ground was once again covered with snow. Fowler didn't know yet that he had won. He was still recording his survival diary on his walking stick. Today was the last routine medical checkup by the crew. If there were no issues with his health, he could claim the victory. After the medical examination, Fowler couldn't help but talk to the staff. Not having communicated with anyone for 3 months, the loneliness was suffocating. He continuously spoke of his longing for his family, determined to keep going with the last bit of his strength, just to make life better for his family. At that moment, Fowler's wife quietly walked up to him. They embraced tightly, overwhelmed with joy. Fowler had been looking forward to this moment for the entire 3 months. All the hardships seemed to vanish. He eagerly introduced the walking stick to his wife, detailing the 87 days recorded on it and his longing for them. He didn't forget to show her his shelter, with over 100 chopsticks and a variety of handmade crafts. Each item represented his longing and responsibility towards his family. Fowler's win was well-deserved. After recuperating, he hurried home, as he hadn't seen his daughter for a long time. All the hardships now seemed so sweet. With this, the 3rd season of Wilderness Solitude came to an end.